We are going to start today's class by going over how we are reading music in 6th grade. When we read music, we already know the history of our songs. We already know some background information. And at this point in Unit 3, in Units 1 and 2, we have already discussed high and low sounds and where we can find those sounds in music. And at the beginning of Unit 3, we have discussed some very basic facts about how to read music. So when we look at high and low sounds, we used to look at them with a line. We used to look at sounds that went above or below the line. And when we started with those high and low sounds, high sounds went above the line because they were going up. And when we looked at low sounds, they went below the line because they were going down. Now, when we look at sounds in terms of music and reading music, instead of high and low, they will be G and E. And just like before, we have a high sound, which is G now, and we have a low sound, which is E. So that high sound that you see on that line that goes above the line and the low sound that you see below will now simply be called G and E. So those high and low sounds are high, which is G. We are giving it a name. Instead of just saying it's a high sound, its name is G. And then those low sounds that we have are now called E. So instead of calling them high and low, they're now called G and E. When we go to read music, we know that we have music that is read from left to right, just like it is read in a regular book. So when we read those pieces of music that we're going to be looking at from left to right, we also know that, like a book, that music has a title. The title of a book is going to tell us what the name of the song is. We also have the staff that has 5 lines and 4 spaces. The staff is where music notes are written. We also have music notes, which show us the length, how many beats is it, and the pitch of the note. So now, music notes are going to tell us how many heartbeats they have, and if it is a G or an E, a high or a low sound. We also have the time signature that tells us how many beats there are in a given measure. And a measure just is a group of beats. It tells us this is the group of beats. And last but not least, we have a bar line, which separates those measures. So these are all of the facts of music, of reading music, that we already know. So we're going to learn how to identify those 2 new music notes and how to play them. So in our high and low sounds, we know that we started with that line, and we called them high and low sounds. Now we're calling them G and E. And so when we have notes in terms of that line, they go above and below the line. And when we look at high to low notes on the staff, we have to create spaces. And before, we were only used to seeing this line. So in order to create spaces, we are going to take a box and put it around that line. So now we have created a line and a box where we now have spaces, where those notes are sitting in spaces between the lines. So we have a low space here and a high space here. So now we have notes that don't just deal with lines, but now we have notes that can sit in spaces between the lines. So if we want to look at a staff, we have to start with that line that we are used to. We can now add the box, and we now have 1, 2, 3 lines and 2 spaces, but a staff has 5 lines and 4 spaces, so we need to add yet another box, and that will give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines and the 4 spaces between them. So our staff looks like this. It has 5 lines and 4 spaces. This is where we place music notes. This is where music notes are written. So when we look at high and low on the staff, the most important thing to remember is that a high sound on a line will have a low sound that is on a line. They're kind of like best friends or buddies. If you have sounds that are going to be on a line, the one below it is going to be on a line as well. So for example, here's a high sound and its low sound. They are both on a line. We can also have high sounds that are in a space and low sounds that are in a space. But if you have a high sound in a space, you will see that it has a low sound in the space. Okay, so regardless of where your high and low sounds are, they will together be on a line or in a space. So when we read high and low sounds, we have used just those words, high and low, and now we're labeling them G and E. So on the staff, we can also find G and E. This is how we read our music notes. G is on the second line of the staff. You can see it here as a quarter note or 2/8 notes. We also have E, which is on the first line of the staff. E can be on the first line as a quarter note, or it can be on the first line as a set of 2/8 notes. I hope this review helped, and if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know.